Hello and welcome to another episode of Leaders of Transformation. Today we have a wonderful guest here who has an extensive background in working with senior leaders in growing their companies, not just growing them, but sustaining that growth. What does it take? And we have Karen Walker here, and Karen is an executive coach, consultant, speaker, and author. And as I said, she works with senior leaders, helping them to create the internal strategies that support their organizational external growth. And she has worked with some of the leading, fastest growing companies, Compaq. We're going to talk about the growth that they experience. It's the fastest growing company, fastest to $1 billion in revenue. And that's in American history. And after working there for 14 years, how she actually went, well, they grew it to annual revenues of $15 billion. And then she left to grow her own consultancy. And so she's been working with senior leaders over the years. She's written a book called No Dumbing Down. And it's an excellent, excellent read. I highly recommend it. I actually read it in preparation for this interview, and I'm going to go back and read it again because it's so good. So you definitely want to get a copy of that. And afterwards, we'll let you know how you can do that. But Karen, we're just really excited to have you. Welcome, Leaders of Transformation.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here and have this conversation with you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And I know you travel a lot, so it took us a little while to coordinate schedules to make this happen. Actually, when I was reading your bio and you said, where are you? You're in Florida, but you're most often found in seat 2C. And I thought that's funny. But you're doing a lot of traveling and going around and making a huge impact in businesses. And so I'm really excited for you to share a little bit of that with us here today. Mm-hmm. Now, before we go any further, I do want to do a shout out to Marie Incontrera, who actually introduced us. Marie's amazing. She has a consultancy, and she has been sending me clients, her clients, to be guests on the show, and they're always top notch. So we appreciate you, Marie. Thanks for your support. And also we appreciate you who are listening and watching this podcast, because you're the reason why we do this. We do this because we want to make an impact. We want to help people get their message out, people that are creating an impact in the world. But we also want to encourage you and inspire you to be the difference maker and the world changer that you're capable of being. And I do believe that every single person is capable of making a huge impact in the world. It's just figuring out what your sweet spot is. What do you have that you can bring of value and that will help make a difference? So we hope that this will inspire you and also give you tips and tools to be an effective leader within your company. If you have a company and a team that you lead, or maybe it's just you're an entrepreneur and you are it. You are the team. Well, it starts with you. How do you lead yourself? So we're going to talk more about that. Now, one thing before we go any further, I also want to mention a book that I'm grabbing a copy to show it here on the video. Power Up Superwomen. I contributed to this book, and it is stories of courage and empowerment. A number of women who come from all sorts of different backgrounds that have gone through loss and tragedies and trials in health, in business, in relationships, and sharing that story of overcoming, how they got to the other side. And it's to encourage you. We're talking this, about inspiring you. This is to inspire you and encourage you to be able to get to the other side of whatever it is that you're going through. So if you're interested in getting a copy of that book, you can go on leadersoftransformation.com/resources, and it is available there. And, after this interview, if you like this interview, enjoyed it, found it valuable, please go on iTunes and leave us a rating and review. It really does help us create a greater reach. We have listeners in over 120 countries, and we want to continue to extend that out. And we think the message here is really valuable and gets to be shared. So imagine if leaders all around the world could get what we're going to be talking about here today as to how to manage growth, how to create it, and how to sustain it. How much better our businesses and our world would be. So with that, Karen, let's talk about that in particular. So businesses like Compaq, you were part of Compaq, and fastest growing company at that time, grew it to 15 billion, super successful. What we oftentimes see, and I know you allude to in the book, that all of a sudden you get to that point where it starts to slow down and dip down. And some companies completely crash and burn. Some are able to sustain it, but just kind of limping along. Why does that happen? And then, of course, we're going to talk about how do we avoid that?
Yeah, well, great place to start. Thank you. Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about my journey with Compaq because I was there for the sort of that great rapid rise, which lasted for an incredibly long time. And of course, I thought that was normal because I was in my early 20s when I joined Compaq, and I didn't have a lot of other experience. I knew it wasn't quite normal, but I didn't know it was as abnormal as it was. Yeah, so I joined when there was no revenue yet. I was employee 104, and then we went on to do $111 million in our first year. And so proof of concept, product market fit, check. But we went on to be, at that time, the fastest to $1 billion. And it was phenomenal for many reasons. One was we didn't know that was going to happen. And so we had to make, we didn't know what was coming at us, right? We just knew that we had the opportunity to grow. And so it was like every action and inaction that we took, you could really see the result of. And we hired a little bit ahead. So we overhired, hoping that the growth would continue and that, we would use the capacity of the leaders and individual contributors in the organization. And that turned out to be the case. But it was incredible. Part of what created that beyond the product market fit was the team that was put together. We were able to work in an atmosphere where people were so invested in sort of the mission of the business and the vision of the business that we allowed each other to work in the white spaces to get things done. I think that's one of the things we lose as companies get bigger. It's like, don't step on my turf. And when you're in a startup and it is roaring, it's just like, please, take as much as you want as long as it gets done, right? Because you really see and feel the interdependence of the organization. And it's really about optimizing the whole, not maximizing any one function. And so this working together is one of the things that made us so successful. There wasn't a place for what I call dumbing down, which is where the title of my book came from. And dumbing down is basically just teamwork as usual, right? It's where we take these skill sets we have as individuals that have made us successful and we try to apply them exactly to the team. And you need different skill sets for a team. And so when you don't have those, what happens is your conflicts don't get resolved, or your priorities continue to be misaligned, or at the end of the day, the team can only perform at the level of the lowest performing member. So everyone else has to dumb down to that level. Now, it's not that individual is always necessarily bad. In fact, often they're not. They just don't have the skill set or the priorities or the resources to play at the same level as the rest of the team. And so your teamwork isn't what it should be. Sometimes you don't have the processes and tools in place, right, in order to maintain the growth. On the other hand, you don't want to get over-processed so that becomes sort of a quagmire and an excuse for things. Or maybe we forget to take time to think, to really sort of get above it all and look at the bigger landscape, because we're so busy in today's urgent stuff that we don't step back and have a look. So those are some of the things that I think we were fortunate to be able to have a handle on at Compaq, and that allowed us to grow. But then, as the company gets bigger, we were at, I think, 17,000 employees by the time I left. So it was a very, very different place when I left. There were very few of the early employees left, for one, because, you at that size and a more stable company, you just attract a different kind of employee. Not bad, just different. And what can happen with a company when it gets that large is you stop policing for dumbing down, right? You allow office politics to creep back in. You don't take the time to really make sure that everyone is aligned in terms of the 10,000 things they're doing every day. And over time, then the foundation, I think, of the organization begins to erode. And that's definitely one of the things that happens in large companies.
Yes, got it. Well, and I love what you call it. It's dumbing down, or it's like I look at it as like it's watering down that power of the organization itself. And I know you talk about the and we in your book you talk about 5 strategies, and so we can get into there. But you talk about and you mentioned it just briefly here, but you talk about it more in your book, is that a company will only function to the level of its lowest performing employees. And I think there's a misconception, right? It's like, well, as long as we have top performers, they're going to carry the weight of the rest of the organization. And that's not actually the
That,
case. I
that's
mean,
right.
it's like you call it the weakest link.
Hmm.
Like as a business coach, sometimes I'll talk to my clients and they're like, "Oh, things are going great." I went, "Awesome. That's fantastic. I'm glad that all those things are going really well. What's the weakest link? I want to
Yeah.
know what that is." And it
Yeah.
makes them think, "Oh, yeah, right, right." Because those are the things that can cripple you.
Right. I think it's important to pay attention to the weakest link and to the what's going really well that we need to make sure we keep, applying.
Yes.
But what happens with this weak link is that your A players, your high performers can definitely carry the organization, and they will for a while, right? And I think about on a team, if you have one player that's not quite up, the rest of the team can help with that. But when you get two, right, then it just really starts to be a drag. In an organization, the same thing happens. And eventually, your top performers begin to see the team or the organization as sort of a tar pit, right? It is just
Hmm.
sucking life rather than breathing potential. And so they will leave the team and or head for the exits and leave the organization, because an A player doesn't have to and doesn't want to work in an organization where that's the norm.
Got it. Yes. Well, so in Compaq, you mentioned a lot of the people were no longer there, and there is also this transition. So the other thing that happens, you get all these A players that leave, but you also have a new generation of people that come
Exactly.
in that weren't part of the original growth and
Mhm.
maybe don't have the passion of the original excitement of growing a company to that level. Now they're kind of in maintenance, right? And or yeah, so can you talk a little bit about that sort of the scenario that happens there?
Yeah, there's definitely, people come to organizations for different reasons. And in fact, when I'm coaching, it's one of the things I always ask people first: why are you here? Out of all the things that you could be doing and places you could be doing them, why are you doing them here in this place at this time? And that's a very enlightening sort of conversation to have, because it makes people think, oh, right. But what happens in the larger companies as they grow is that people come in some cases because the benefits are good. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different reason to be at work. Now, I honestly believe that 99% of all people go to work every day wanting to do good work. So that doesn't take away from their commitment to doing good work. They're just there for different reasons. And people become, in early stages, you tend to get people who are very comfortable with ambiguity. They're comfortable taking some risk. And in the sort of the later stages, you get people who are more risk averse, who don't want to take risk and don't want to see the organization take risk either, right? And so there's just this thing that changes. And I think about it as this continuum from startup to grown up. But unlike people, right, we grow from young to old. Organizations certainly do that in terms of time, but we don't have to do that in terms of our behaviors. As a startup company has a lot of sort of seat of the pants that goes on in terms of how we make decisions or lack of process. And a grown-up company would have sort of many more processes. But we don't want to just make that a one way. We want to be able to be anywhere in that continuum depending on the situation that's in front of us. Because I certainly have seen young companies that were so bound by process that they couldn't get things done, right? And certainly we've all seen large companies that bought startup companies, right? Sort of grown-up company buys a startup company and then just proceeds to smother them with process, right?
Yeah.
I have a brother who's in the tech industry, and he said, "Oh, we don't have an M&A department. We have an M&D department." I said, "Okay, what's M&D?" And he said, "We have merge and destroy. We
Mm,
buy these amazing little companies, and then we systematically set about destroying all the value that we got. And we
yeah.
do that because we sort of overburden them with process rather than sort of infusing some of that sort of startup energy back into the grown-up company."
Yeah. Well, and as a consumer who's on the other side, oftentimes you'll hear people say, "Well, what happened to that company? I love them." I mean, I'm thinking of one in particular who's a service provider
Mhm.
for businesses in website hosting and so forth, and got bought up, and everybody's like, "Oh, it was so great up until that point." And we all hear
Right.
those stories, but there's and it's unfortunate It's unfortunate, and it's not intentional. It's funny because
Oh,
it's
you're
not like
right.
somebody's going in, let's just go strangle them. No, it's happening through, like you said, through process and not being aware of certain things. So let's talk about your book and the strategies that you
Mhm.
recommend so that you can avoid this. We can avoid this happening within organizations.
Yeah. So this book, it was a labor of love with emphasis on the labor. I never thought I was going to write a book. I read a lot, obviously, but I didn't know I had a book in me. And I realized that just in the writing, I codified so many of the ideas and the methods that I had seen work, both drawing from my experience at Compaq, but also now like 2 decades of working with primarily high-tech growth firms. It was really wonderful to just to be able to see that come to life on the page. But the book it's a primer for CEOs and senior leaders, which doesn't mean it's its only audience. I've definitely heard from many people that are not at the senior level in my client groups who said, "Oh wow, it's so nice to be able to know what are the senior leaders paying attention to, and how can we help." Right, and particularly for people who are interested in leadership development, it's been really useful.
Well, and
But
and you're very succinct on it. I mean, I think it's like 112 pages. I mean,
yeah, definitely.
you don't go into a lot of fluff into this book. It's like, look, this is, which I love. It's like the executive summary too. That there's a reason why it's called the executive summary, because it's very succinct. You're talking about senior leaders. They don't have time to read a lot of fluff. They're like, look, tell me what I need to do. Tell me what I need to do. Incorporate story, which you certainly do. But just a
Yeah.
call, I meant to say that to you when I was reading it. I was thinking about that. I'm like, wow, she's really made this succinct and powerful, because that's your audience. So
Yeah,
give it to me.
exactly. Yeah, I handed it to one of my
Yeah.
clients and he said, "Oh, thank you." He said, "I was afraid you were going to write a tome." He said, "This I can take with me on the plane and I can read it and I can make notes and I can do something with it." And so, yes, definitely a primer, and I am nothing if not concise. So that's sort of the big picture of the book, but it's got different strategies in it that I believe CEOs can and should use that we lose sight of. Right? It's not rocket science. It's reminders about the things to pay attention to. And so first, of course, is this idea of senior leaders have to take responsibility for what goes on in the organization. I was working with a client who'd gone to a new company in the Boston area many years ago, and he invited me in to meet the new CEO. And when I got there, I had a short meeting with my guy, and he said, "Oh," he said, "this is everything I thought it was going to be, but there's this thing that happens here. We have like this malaise." He said, it's just like this sort of gray monotone thing when you come in the office. It doesn't have any energy." So I thought, "Oh, that's interesting." It's a tech company. Normally they're like, all the energy bursting out of the walls. And so I meet the CEO and I go in his office, and he starts telling me the same thing about what's going on there. And I was so fascinated at what I heard, but sort of more at what I didn't hear, which was I didn't hear him saying his role in this or what he had done to try to fix it, or the responsibility of him sort of getting his senior team in a different place and then making sure the rest of the organization knew. So he had this aha moment as we were talking when I asked him that question. "So what have you done? And what are the results been of that?" And he had this aha moment. And then he's like, "Oh yeah, this is my responsibility too. It's not just about, sales and marketing. No, it's about making sure that people are feeling like they're working in a place where they're seen and rewarded and connected." And we went on to sort of change the culture there, which was terrific. But anyway, there's a responsibility of senior leadership to think about how do we make sure we're aligned internally and we are really able to scale as an organization rather than straining and pulling in different directions. And it's not enough just to do this at your annual retreat, right?
Yeah.
Annual strategy retreats are a good thing, but they are not enough. The world is changing too quickly. So
Well, that's an interesting point that you say that the world is changing so quickly. So the 3 to 5 to 10 year planning out for the future is important.
yeah.
And you've got to be looking, more frequently. The frequency of interaction is key here. You're to be able to make those kind of changes. One of the things I oftentimes will say is that, the bottleneck in a bottle, right? The bottleneck always happens at the top. You don't find it at
Oh,
the
that's
bottom,
great.
right?
That's
So
perfect.
it's like, So anyway,
Yeah,
but
I will use that with attribution. That's
no,
great. I
well, you
love
know
the
how it
visual.
works, right? You say it, you
Yeah,
give credit for 3 times. The third time, you're like I've always said, I heard
yeah,
someone,
it's great.
somebody
Fantastic.
said, I think and then it's yours.
That's That's great.
But
Yeah, so
yeah,
I think about that. That when things change, certainly we have to be sort of always conscious about the changes that are going around that might most impact us. But one of the things we did successfully at Compaq, and one of the strategies in the book, is this idea of playing bumper cars. And I love that analogy because you get in your bumper car and you go off, and things just sort of careen into you, right, from different blind spots and angles, and they send you off in a direction you weren't expecting to go. But what keeps the game going is that you have guardrails, right? You're going to bounce back into the arena. And so for the senior team to sort out in their strategy sessions, here's how we think we're going to grow. We know it won't really be a straight line. It never is. But what are our guardrails, right? If we're growing faster than we thought, what's that point where we're going to have so much strain internally that we can't keep up, and we start to disappoint our customers? We start to see employees leave because they don't feel like they can be successful. What is that point we're going to bounce off on the top? What are we going to do when we get there, right? Is there a way to put more resources in place at that point so we can continue on that trajectory?
yeah,
Or do we need to slow down some business development initiatives while we catch up? Right?
yeah,
And the same thing on the bottom side, right? I think we pay more attention to that, like, if sales aren't coming in, here's where we're going to cut first, right? But you got to pay attention to the top side too, because you can easily get out of alignment there. So
yeah,
bumper cars is a big strategy in the book. We talked about dumbing down and bumper cars. This idea of startup to grown up, and how that is a continuum, not just a one-way street. And then there's this idea of levitating, which is what I think about when I think about taking time to think. So the top team really does. I mean, I think it's one of the most important responsibilities of any senior leader, and it's really what you get paid for. Is having this bigger, broader view of the organization, a bigger, broader view of what's going on in your industry or the world, and charting the path forward. And you cannot do that when you are running, at least I don't know anyone who can, when you're running from meeting to meeting every hour on the hour every day. And then, quote, getting your work done at night and on the weekends, right? Or the occasional holiday. You have to have some time that you've put into your calendar, because no one else is going to do it for you, where you take time to think. And for some people, you can, just take an hour and sort of clear your mind and do it. Other people need, a half a day at a time, or they need, every other Friday. But it's important to do it, because you're not going to have these aha moments if you don't do it. I mean, there's the whole Archimedes story, right, about how he was had this problem to solve about the regular weight of the regular volume of a crown, and he got in the bathtub and he had this aha moment about if he put the crown in, he could solve the problem, and it was because he wasn't thinking about it, right? He just had cleared his mind, and we see that over and over and over again in current organizations too. I think the final and sort of keystone, if you will, to the book is this idea of accountability. I call it the so what, because we've all read books, we've gone to conferences, we've listened to podcasts. We're like, oh, wow, that's such a great idea. I should do something with that. And then I look at my calendar and it's like, oh, it's got so much stuff in it. Or, I go into my email, I got another 300 emails, and you don't get back to it, right? And so how do you hold yourself, and how does your team help hold you, some mutual accountability, so that you actually change the behaviors and get the things done that you want to get done? And that is the final part of the book, which is how do we do something with this, rather than just having it be a good idea that we read or heard about this year.
yeah. Oh, there's so many distractions now more than ever. There's distractions personally and professionally, keeping up with, our networks are bigger, we've got social media factoring in that. There's so many distractions. Yeah. And how do you stay focused? I love what you said there about the guardrails and the bumper cars, the
Mm.
guardrails
Mhm.
on the top, not just the bottom, because yeah, it's, if you talk to a leader and you talk about growth and massive growth, exponential growth, they're like, hey, that's a nice problem. We'd like to have
Yeah.
that problem.
Yeah.
Yes, to a point, because then, but then there's a point where you could implode and it could all fall apart from there. So really, really great
Yeah.
distinctions. Now, you've been doing this a long time and you've worked with Fortune 500 companies all over the world and been very, very successful at it. What keeps you going? What is your motivation for teaching this? And
Yeah.
yeah, how do you keep it interesting for yourself?
Yeah. I had a friend ask me a couple of years ago. She said, "Oh, she was a consultant. She said, 'You're successful. Why do you keep growing your business?' And I was like, 'Grow or die.' I mean, there is no steady state in the world."
That's true.
And this is something I tell my clients too. If you think there's a steady state, you are fooling yourself, because things are moving and changing. And if you are steady state, you are actually in decline. And I just do not see myself in living in a state like that. So
Yeah.
I love my clients. I love the work that I do. And when I find something else I'd rather be doing, I'm sure I'll move on to do that. But I've had now 2 decades of doing this work. And as long as I'm choosing good clients, and I'm fortunate, knock on wood, that I have the capability of choosing good clients and doing work that I love. I'm now speaking, which is sort of a whole nother kind of energizing thing that happens. I'll just keep doing it until, as I say, I find something else I'd rather be doing.
So you mentioned about finding good clients. So who's a good client
Mhm.
for you?
Yeah, so my ideal client is always a company that's in growth mode, right? It's not that I haven't worked with clients who are turning around, but there has to be sort of some rationale for that. Like maybe they just got an investment from a PE firm or a venture capital firm, and so they're changing out the leadership team and they're ready to go into growth mode. So I'll help. I can help through that process. But it's definitely a company that's growing or ready to grow. It has what I call an enlightened CEO or a better CEO. But it's a CEO who gets it that it's not just about technology, right? His success is about, or her success is about more than technology, and it's about how things are done as much as what is done, because that's what's sustainable over the long term, and that will allow me in partnership to work in the white spaces in the organization to help them be more effective. I'm an industrial engineer by degree, and so I sort of grew up with the scarlet letter of my forehead was E for effectiveness, right? Because that's what's in my core. So it's working with a CEO or a senior leader in an organization who's interested in growing and scaling, and willing to do the work to do that. And this, it's not you definitely can see results right away, but the payoff are longer term results. You might remember there was an article by Jim Collins many years ago in the Harvard Business Review called Built to Flip or Built to Scale.
Mm.
So my clients are built to scale. It doesn't mean there might not be an amazing exit in their future, even in their near-term future. But the exit will come about because they can scale, right? Not because they've been stripped to the core and sold.
Yes, actually, I do remember that.
Yeah.
Him talking about that. I love Jim's work. Is really, really good. Actually, speaking of effectiveness, one
Hmm.
of the things that in the book that I wanted to just circle back to, group think. What's
Yes.
the problem or the benefit of group think?
Yeah. So I would say there's very little benefit to groupthink. I just like to
Yeah, I
take that
kind of
off the
set that
table.
up, but yeah,
Thank you for that.
having read your book, I
Yeah.
never thought about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. The problem with groupthink is groupthink is basically either a group being lazy, so it's where everybody just nods their head and they move on because they don't put the energy into solving the problem. And let me just take an aside here and say that not all problems have to be solved, and not all problems have to be solved by you. Right? This is something that I get caught up in, and I definitely see it in my clients. We're good problem solvers, but it doesn't mean you should spend your time solving all the problems. Right? Let someone else do it, or if they're not
Yeah.
important, just let them not be solved. But in the group think front, this is where a team doesn't put the energy into paying attention to problems that should be solved, or they do it in a way where they don't really sort of work through the conflict that's there. right? Either the person who brings up the conflict is shut down by someone who has more power in the situation, or because the rest of the team doesn't sort of take it up. If somebody brings up an issue in a meeting and nobody else acknowledges it, then the team is just going to move on. And groupthink has caused some really major issues. I mean, I think it happens all the day, at all times, every day in organizations. The biggest, and when I first heard about groupthink, was the Challenger explosion. There actually had been a meeting with NASA and one of the suppliers about the O-rings. For those that don't remember, the O-rings on the space shuttle caused the problem that caused the Challenger to explode. And one of the engineers knew it, and he brought it up in the meeting. And they were like, well, can you definitely prove, because there was a lot of pressure to get the Challenger up. They'd already scrubbed a couple of launches. And they said, can you definitely prove they're going to blow up? And he said, well, no, I can't. But what I know is with this temperature, it's directionally not correct. It's not in the direction of goodness. And he got shut down by the team. And of course, the outcome in that case was that the space shuttle blew up. And so there are consequences to groupthink. And I believe that if teams will take the time to talk about their process as well as the content of what they're doing, they can avoid that. So there's permission in the team for conflicts to be brought up and to be explored. And again, it doesn't mean everything every time, right? You never want to be the person that at every meeting is causing disruption by slowing things down, by asking the hard questions. The whole team has a responsibility for this. Don't put it on any one person's shoulders. But you can avoid a lot of rework and sort of heartache down the line by paying attention to important disagreements or issues when they come up.
Yeah. Oh, and you mentioned about not every problem needs to be solved. Sometimes
Yes.
we get caught up with what there's a story of an airline going down, a plane going down, and it was because they were focused on this like 75-cent light bulb.
Yes, I just read that. It was in Florida, actually. One of the flights out over the Everglades. They were focused on not flying the plane, but on a light bulb that had gone out.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a great lesson in that. Now, is there a point where, I'm a big believer, like you say, you're either growing or dying, and you're never staying the same. Is there a point that maybe you've seen that or can envision that where you just can't grow anymore? Like you just can't, I'm not sure if there is. I'm just asking you if that is, because it's like you're constantly growing to what extent?
Yep. Yeah. So be clear about what your vision is for the organization or for your career, or for your team. Right. And it might be that, you want to reach something that's a little more steady state. Again, this is a continuum. It's not a sort of go all out or don't go out at all. There could be some place in the middle. I certainly have friends, colleagues, clients who reached a point in their career when they're like, wow, I want to go coach Little League, which means I can't be at the office every day at 6 o'clock. Right.
Yeah.
So, they pull back a little bit and delegate a little more, which is actually a good thing. A lot of goodness comes from that, so that they can be at the time in their life when they are and have a little more balance. I think for an organization, that you should internally take the parts of the organization that are replicable and scalable and turn them into what I call a utility, right? So it's a process. It's a good process. It's in place when you've had to solve the same problem over and over again, where you can just flip a switch and the problem gets solved. I mean, people oftentimes, this is where that standard operating procedure comes into place. And we see it often in sort of what happened in finance or some of the support organizations, which again doesn't mean it's 100% of everything, but that there's a basis there, so that you can spend your time focusing on other parts of the organization. So I would say that from a growth standpoint, it's not that everything should be in flux all the time, right? But to make sure that the important things, the things that are changing, that are really going to impact you in your career or are going to impact your organization, that's where you need to focus with growth and change mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. And growth may not be just always in revenue, which is what most people think. It's like
Exactly.
growing bigger. It's what you're talking about is also the internal processes. You're growing, but you're actually getting more solid, more,
Hmm.
sturdy from
Yeah,
within,
sturdy is a great word.
is
Yeah.
what you're talking about. This has been great. So people can go to karenwalker.us. They can
Mhm.
get a copy of your book there. Is it on Amazon as well?
It is. It's in all the places online one would normally find a book. You can go to nodumbingdown.com, and that will take you directly to one of those places to buy the book. And then definitely there's a section on the website devoted to it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Oh, I would just say I really appreciate the time and attention that you put into your podcast. It's not just a series of questions for you. You did an excellent job of sort of digging into who I am and what I'm about so that we could have a real conversation. And then I would say to the people that listen, one of the things that I try to say to everyone that I come in contact with in a professional way for sure, and sometimes personally, and that is just to make sure that you're taking time to think, right? That you're taking time to think bigger, because it is so easy, particularly in today's organizations, to get sort of caught up in the too much to do, right? There, every organization will take as much from you as you will give it, and that's not a bad thing, but you have to decide where those boundaries are for yourself. And
Mm.
part of what you need to do is make sure that you just lift your head up from time to time and take a little bit of the longer view, and that will serve you and your organization in good stead.
Very good. Well, thank you. And I appreciate you being here and taking the time out to be here, but also bringing the best of what you do to us so that we can learn from it and hopefully avoid some of the mistakes that you've seen along the way. We can avoid those in our organization. So thank you, Karen. And thank you to our listeners for being here. I'm a big believer in leaders take action. If you want transformation to happen within your life, in your business, in any area that's important to you, then you're going to take action on it. Now, sometimes that action is stopping and thinking, like Karen's suggesting. So it's not necessarily doing more that is always the answer, but it is taking a affirmative action to move you forward in the direction that you want to go. And so it's funny because a lot of times people say to me, "What do you need to do? What do I need to do more of?" Clients. I'm like, well, the first question is, what do you need to do less of?
Yeah.
Because there's a point where you can't do more, and the answer isn't doing more. And I think Karen has beautifully explained that to us here as to what it really takes to grow and to sustain that growth and to put the proper processes in place. You can get a copy of her book, nodumbingdown.com, and you can also get it on karenwalker.us, get on Amazon, and you can, of course, connect with Karen through her website as well if you're interested. If you're one of those ideal clients that she's talking about, a company that would be interested in working with her, then please do contact her. And she, I know, will be amazing. She's got tremendous background. So we'll have all the details in the show notes that you can connect with her there. And we look forward to hearing your comments. You can go on social media, find us on all the different platforms. You can also go on leadersoftransformation.com and leave us a comment there. And as I said in the beginning, we really appreciate if you could leave us a rating and review on iTunes. It helps us to increase our audience. And I love to hear those. I love to hear what the feedback is from you and what you'd like to hear more of, and just how this has impacted you. So we look forward to hearing from you, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Leaders of Transformation real soon.